this morning when I woke up, the Lord just began to show me something, and you're going to have to excuse my drawing abilities, okay? But here's some things that I began to see, and I feel like this really applies to where we're at. This is not going to be a very long message or anything. This is just a little short thing that the Lord was showing me this morning. And I really feel like it will not only help us, but anybody that watches this. And if not, then don't share it. But this is what I saw in my spirit. It's kind of like this fog. You guys see the fog?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And in that fog, what we have is, can you guys see that? Good. E-V-I-L, evil, right? That's all right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, all right. Nothing worse than smelling something wrong right in front of everybody, you know. So in this fog we have good and evil. And over here, don't laugh. Over here we have our vehicle. Right? This is us. Alright? I said, don't laugh. This is what a lot of us have been doing, and this is what I saw in my spirit this morning. I saw us in our vehicles, and when we turn on our high beams, in a fog, what happens? You can't see anything. What happens? The light actually reflects and what's the word? Refracts back into your face. It reflects and reflects off of the fog, and you can't see. And so what do you do when you're driving in fog? What do? You put on your low beams, or you put on your fog lights. Why do you put on low beams? Because then you're able to see underneath the fog. Underneath the fog. What the Lord started showing me this morning is that we are just like this vehicle. We're driving through the fog of what's happening around us. Right? Let me add just a little something else. We know that, and I've taught on this, and if you're watching this on Facebook, you can go back and view this in our videos, but I taught on the year, and this year is 5781. 80 is pay, okay? And 1 is olive. And I hope, let me draw bigger so everyone can see, okay? There's pay, and this is olive. And this equals 81. Okay? So we have pay and olive. This year is 5781. This is a year of the father or the strong leader speaking. But what's happening, and what the Lord began to show me this morning, is that we're driving through this fog, and there is this battle. How many of you guys heard over and over and over? And I shared just a text to a few of you in the body here. But what I began to share last week was that we need to be careful because there's all this speaking going on, all these things that are going on. It's like we're driving through a fog. And it has turned into a battle between good and evil. And here's what we need to do is we need to realize that the Lord is trying to speak through all this. And guess what's happening is that we have an abundance. I explained this week to somebody at work, that we have an abundance of people speaking right now. That is causing part of the fog. That is causing part of the fog. We have an abundance of prophets. There is a prophet on every corner. I am not speaking against the prophets because I'm not that stupid. But I will say that there is a prophet whenever what you put on, yesterday I put on some worship and just began to worship on YouTube. And there is so many prophetic words, one after the other, after the other, after the other on YouTube. There is so much fog, and it's good and evil, and there's so many speaking. We need to turn on the low beams. And we need to get focused because we're driving through a fog. We need to get focused with our low beams to only hear what the Father is speaking. Let me go to John 10 in verse 4 and 5. It says, when he put forth his own, he goes before them, and the sheep follow him because they know his voice. This is a lot of voices happening right here. The sheep follow him because they know his voice. But if you're driving through the fog and you have your high beams on, you're like, okay, what's happening? Well, this prophet said this prophet said this guy said this, and you know what I mean? And I started to fall into that this week. I was like, oh man. One guy came through, I sent it to just a handful in our body. I said, I don't know. I trust the guy that sent me this. Maybe we better listen to this. Let's get prepared. Okay? I'm not saying that was even wrong. What I'm saying is that the Father is speaking. We know the Father is speaking because we're in the year 5781, the year that the Father is speaking, but we have all these other voices, and we see this battle over good and evil. If we turn on our low beams, we'll begin to get focused on His voice. On His voice. His voice may be coming through the prophets. His voice may be coming through your neighbor. His voice may be coming through somebody that's scared to death. His voice may be coming through somebody that's having a good time. I don't know. But you have to hear His voice. Let me read this again. John 10:4, it says, but when He put forth His own, He goes before them, just like going through fog. He goes before them, and the sheep follow Him because they know His voice. Verse 5, a stranger they simply will not follow. I love the way the New American Standard puts that. A stranger they simply will not follow. Guess what? We've been driving through the fog. There might be some frogs in there, I don't know. We're driving through the fog, and it says right here that His sheep simply will not follow, but will flee from Him, because they do not know the voice of a stranger. And because there's so much fog and so many voices going on, that we are kind of like trapped going, following strange voices and following all these different things. I want to challenge you today that what we do is we begin to turn on the low beams. We begin to look under the fog. And you know what I saw in my spirit this morning as I began to look under the fog? I literally woke up and was seeing this in my spirit. I was in a vehicle driving, and as I looked, the brights were refracting off of the light, or the moisture, and reflecting into my eyes, and I couldn't see anything. And I just turned my dims. I took the brights off. And you know what I began to see underneath all of this fog? A bunch of people that I'd missed. I couldn't see them, and I couldn't see God's purpose for them, or my purpose to be in their lives, or anything that was going on, because all I could see was that bright, shiny fog shining back into my face. We've been told by prophets, we've been told by pastors, and all these different voices out here, that we're in a battle between good and evil. Let me take this just a step further. Just bear with me for a minute here.
Do you want to make your eraser?
Well, I don't know where it's at, so
Kleenex will work, huh?
this will work. I got it. Okay. Just give you a second for that to sink in. Okay. There's two things going on here. You know Bob Ross. It's a happy tree. Right? No mistakes, just some happy accidents, right? Anyway, moving on. Here's what's going on. I shared this with our body a little bit earlier, but there are two trees. There's a tree in Genesis. We'll just go there right now. Let's go to Genesis chapter 1. No, it's not chapter 1. I think it's going to be like chapter 4. You guys find it before me, let me know. Chapter 2. Verse 9 says, out of the ground the Lord God causes to grow every tree that is pleasing to the sight and good for food. The tree of life also in the midst of the garden, and the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. I just want to point out, like I said, it's just a short video. I'm going to get off of here in just a minute. But I just want to point out that we are so focused in on this fog that really is the leaves on one tree. Mm-hmm. The tree of good and evil, the knowledge of good and evil. And if we have our focus set so much on good and evil, we are going to miss the tree of life. Hopefully. I don't know where my big markers are. Hopefully you guys can see that, but we've been so focused on good and evil that we're going to miss life. And this car, this vehicle that we've been in, we've been shining the brights on the fog. We need to hit the dims. We need to look under the fog because God is trying to focus our eyes on life. So let me say this. What is God doing beyond our world? Beyond the world of good and evil, the knowledge of good and evil, which unfortunately is the world we live in, but we are not of this world. Yeshua said that we are in this world, but not of this world, right? So if that's the case, then let me ask you this. If we're in the world, but not of the world, if we're going to be of the world, we're going to be consumed with this battle between good and evil. What we need to do is be proactive. You know, I read a lot of leadership books, and I read a lot of business books and different things, you know. And one thing that I've seen over and over and over again, the guy that does really well is the guy that sees beyond the now and looks into the future and goes, wow, there's going to be a real need for this in about 4 or 5 days. There's going to be a real need for this in about a month. There's going to be a real need for this in 2 or 3 months. That's life. Because the fog is here. But if we begin to look at that tree of life and say, okay, what's going to be needed? What's coming? And so I just want to end this little message by saying this. What is your focus on? If your focus is on this battle between good and evil, I have nothing to help you with. There's nothing I can tell you. But if you'd like to put on the dims, and let me say this, you know what? When you're cruising down a highway and you hit a fog bank, I've been in training all week long because I teach other people how to drive school buses. And I've been in training, but you know what? When you're driving a vehicle, the only thing that you can control is your choices in that vehicle. And you know, if I'm in a school bus full of kids, and I hit a fog bank, the only thing that I can control in that situation is my speed. So let me encourage you, let's slow down. Slow down. I feel like a lot of us have been kind of just running like, oh, well, this guy said this. This guy, oh, I like this guy. You know, we look spastic. We look like we're better, you know what I mean? We look like I felt this morning. I've been fasting. I ate a whole bunch of sugar this morning. It was awesome. Anyway, but I was having a great time. But that's how we look. And I'm telling you, get your eyes off of this battle. Get your eyes on the right tree. Slow down. Put the low beams on. And get a better picture of what's happening. This will still go on no matter what. This will still go on no matter what. But we are here for such a time as this. Right? Just like Esther. And you know what? Not just like Esther, but just like Mordecai. Because it took a Mordecai for there to be an Esther, right?
Yep.
And there took an Esther for someone to stand up and save Israel. And so some of us are called to be Mordecais, some of us are called to be Esthers. All I know is if we continue on at a high rate of speed with the brights on, we're not going to see it. So if you want to go ahead and shut that off, and if this made sense to you, if it blessed you, I just encourage you to share this and to pass it around. Bless you guys.